joining, just getting this live started. If you're scrolling by, I hope you stick around for a few minutes and leave me your thoughts in the comments. And if someone can confirm, can hear me, that would be awesome. Sometimes I have issues with TikTok and the microphone not working properly. But we have an interesting topic today. How do we reach 50 to 70 million independents? And really, it's just I don't have enough space. I want to reach soft Republicans and soft Democrats. So are those more reasonable people on both sides? How do we reach all them? If you let me know in the comments, because that's the goal here with TK Civics, is how do we reach as many people as possible to let them know that it doesn't have to be this way, that all this bullshit around us is manufactured, division, and conquer. And it truly doesn't have to be like this if we didn't want it to be. So as you're joining and scrolling by, let's hope this reaches as many people as possible. And I want to have a good conversation. I'll be inviting guests into the chat to see if people have ideas, because we all know whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or anyone in between, that's the direction of our country is not going great. So what's an independent? What's an independent? Okay, Rick is back. Welcome, Rick. What's an independent? Someone in the middle, Rick. Leaning one way or the other a little bit, but someone who doesn't classify themselves as a Republican or a Democrat. It's not that hard. That's what an independent is. And everyone can hear me. Can you guys hear me? Please give me a thumbs up. If you can hear me, you should be able to hear some audio in the background as well. Again, just getting started on this live. I just got done watching another live about the Second Amendment and, of course, the reducing gun violence. And I thought that was somewhat interesting. And it always just goes back and forth into a constant fight and argument about the Second Amendment. And it's just about belittling people. That's not something I try and do here unless it's actually really warranted. But we don't belittle people here. We have conversations and we try and reach. They can still get heated at times, but we try and reach as many people as possible and trying to do something different instead of just being on the right and arguing about right issues or left issues. That's not what I want to do here. I want to argue about America, not argue, but promote and advocate for civics and American values and improving or turning the tide of our democracy into having good representation for the people, by the people, and bringing representation back to the people. So there's my opening remarks as more people join. So the question here is, how do we reach, if you want to join in as a guest, how do we reach 50 to 70 million independents and or reasonable, sensible, thanks for the gift, what are they called? Gifts, badges? I still don't know. It's amazing. But how do we reach the 75 million independents that vote that are not affiliated with Republicans or Democrats? They may lean one way or the other, and they often do, or the sensible, reasonable Americans that actually want to bring representation back to the people. It can be done. People think it can't be done, but those independents have no representation. It is a tough one, right, Jay? It's no doubt it's tough, but it's not complex. It's challenging, but it's not complex. We have social media today. We have other forms, but we have to reach more people because it's amazing that we all get pulled one way or the other, right? Red versus blue, right versus left, whatever it might be. We're always getting pulled, and we all may lean one way, but then it's like a tug of war. You lean one way, and you end up falling into the trap, and that's thinking that you have to vote blue or red, and for a practical purpose, you do have to vote blue or red right now, but it doesn't have to be that way in the future. And that's what I want to promote, because there's nothing in the Constitution that says there has to be only two parties. There's nothing technically proving that there has to be, or dictating that there has to be two parties. There can be more than two parties. There can be independents. And it's just a mindset. It's in our minds that we think we can't. And it's not to say that it'll happen overnight. It'll certainly take time. Chuck, all right. Chuck, you're going to be the first guest, but it doesn't have to be that way. And you have to think there's more independents that are not registered. When I say independents, those are people that are not registered with the Republican or Democratic Party. And just think to yourself, those people, 75 million of us, and I am a fierce independent. I always say it. So thanks for tuning in. but we have no representation in our legislative branch, in our executive branch, and really in our judicial branch as well. We have no representation, and that's so absurd because we are the majority. We are the majority of people, and people who think that it can't happen, well, there used to be the Reform Party in 1992, and that's the blueprint, sort of the blueprint to show that it can happen, that you can do more. So thanks for all the comments and the badges and the likes. Let's see, I'm going to read out a couple of comments, and then you're going to jump in. I think it was Chuck. And you're going to jump in. I know there's a couple. Cuba has the right idea. No parties in the elections. Rick, you also said that Japan is a single party. So obviously we looked that up the other day. It doesn't mean it's not a democracy just because there's one party. That's also not. You could also use the Japanese reference. You could argue what's the difference between one party and no parties? Not too much, right? There's really not much difference there. So just because you don't have one party or zero parties or two parties doesn't mean it's not a democracy. Cuba has the right idea, no parties in the elections. I don't agree with that. Cuba's not doing so well. The Reform Party was a far right-wing party, but it was also a Reform Party meant to do some of the things that I talk about often. Silent, for some reason, I always heard we have 4 parties, but I've only seen 2. Well, there is the Green Party. There are more parties. But you don't really, they are on the ballots. If you look at the ballots, they're there, depending on what state you're in and so forth. But most of the time they're there. It's just that we know it's all a wasted vote. And at the moment, that's true. So I'm going to get Chuck in here. At the moment, it is true that a vote for anything other than the Republican or Democratic Party is a wasted vote in sense, or a protest vote. But it doesn't have to be that way. Hey, Chuck, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing?
Good, welcome. So you have any thoughts? How can we reach 50 to 70 million independents? Or do you disagree with that?
I think it's possible, but the one thing really stopping our democracy from really flourishing is the Electoral College. We have to get rid of that first. And I think bring in ranked choice voting, like they did with Alaska's previous elections.
Yep.
Where Sarah Palin lost despite being like the second person on the ballot. It was crazy. She was super mad.
Ranked choice certainly seems more fair, no doubt about it. But it doesn't seem like there's any movement. Like our existing politicians are never going to put in ranked, or not the politicians, the parties are going to fight against ranked choice voting, right?
Oh, hell yeah. They'll definitely they'll fight against it, as much as they can. They would not like that.
Right. That's why I always, you always look at these sort of intermediary solutions and, the things that we would like to have. And there's a lot of valid ones like the 2 that you mentioned. But the problem is that just like, banning stock trading, or 89% of the population wants federal background checks on gun rights. All these things are very popular things, but of course the 2 parties never let it happen, right? So they'll never vote themselves out of power. And they'll never vote themselves from enriching themselves. And they'll also, even though 89% of the people are for federal background checks, they're not going to vote for that either. So the point is, like,
Right.
even if it's ranked choice voting or any of these other great, there's really a lot of great ideas, they'll never get voted on, right? Because it's not in the best interest of either party.
Yeah, there's too much money in politics right now
Right.
to begin with. Corporations shouldn't be allowed to give to a person unlimited funds. That's insane.
Is this the first time you're on my channel watching this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
always say there has to be a 28th and 29th Amendment, because otherwise, there's all these issues and we fight about all these issues and there's all these ideas and a lot of ideas are great and some of them are not so great. But at the end of the day, the corruption of allowing billionaires, corporations, and special interests to basically dictate what happens in our election or who gets nominated to be in our elections, that's the ultimate problem, right? And
Right.
without that, eliminating that corruption. So my channel has always been based on not about these singular issues. It's about the principles that we all understand. And this is MAGA, liberal, and everywhere in between. We all know that big money in politics needs to be eliminated, right? And it's only gone in the opposite direction since the 80s, since Reagan, Bush, Clinton, and Citizens United in 2014. All these things have eliminated any sort of regulations on campaign finance. And we all know, again, MAGA and liberal know that that has to be the thing. Like, that's the thing that everybody agrees on. Because if you could do that, which is not easy, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's not complex. So that my point of view is always, if you can get 50 to 70 million people that would agree with that, then you can eliminate corruption. You can have a 28th Amendment that says all elections need to be publicly funded by individuals, human beings, and not special interest corporations. And money is not speech, and eliminate all that aspects. Like I just don't see another way to start turning the tide unless it's something really bold like that.
Yeah. One guy in the chat asked, "What is ranked choice?" Does someone have a really good source for him that can better explain it than I can?
Yeah, let's get the exact definition. So it's obviously if your primary person doesn't win, it falls back to the next votes. Ranked choice voting. That's a really bad way to say it as well. Ranked choice voting, also known as instant runoff voting. So voters are ranked candidates 1, 2, 3. If a candidate gets a majority of the first votes, so if someone gets more than 50%, they win immediately. If no one gets the majority, so no one gets 50% of the vote, the candidate with the fewest first choice votes is eliminated. So the bottom person would be eliminated. And then those votes are redistributed. So someone you rank, when you're voting, you rank, I want this person. And if this person doesn't win, I want the next person. This is the next person. So you're ranking your votes by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so if your guy doesn't win, or your candidate doesn't win, it goes to your vote, then moves to the next person on your list. Maybe not the greatest explanation, but nonetheless.
He says, "Nope, I'm against that."
Okay, it's proven to be more fair than what we currently have when we have a two-party system as it is today. So I don't know why it's not more fair. So if your candidate doesn't win, then your vote goes to your second choice, right? And then it accumulates to that person. So it's much more fair in my view, anyway.
Yeah,
but
I think it is too.
But ultimately, we need 50 to 70 million independents, and that's sort of today's topic: is like, how do we reach them? Because there are 75 million of them, and then there's many people that are sensible, reasonable Americans on both the right and the left that would surely agree with eliminating corruption from government and making sure that politicians can't have a career in politics, that it needs to be a temporary civic service. That's my whole platform is based on those two things.
And I think on like the main issues in our country, most people agree and have common sense, understanding of what should be done. You know what I mean? But then they separate us with cultural issues, not, like abortion, shit like that.
Yeah, that's by design, right? Abortion. How many years have we been arguing about that? 60 years, and gun rights, 60 years. We're always being, and that's a tried and true method by anyone trying to remain in control. And that could be parties, that could be companies, that could be everything, right? You divide people, and then you can't get shit done. If our people are divided over cultural wars, then shit, like all the really important stuff, like actually money in politics, no one even pays attention to that. Right.
And like money in politics, like Elon Musk donated $270 million to Donald Trump, and then he got a seat at the table. I mean, come on, that was a paid seat at the table,
right?
Literally
for like 6 months, right? 4 months or whatever it might have been.
and he shut down investigations into his companies. Right. Shocker.
Such a shocker. Well, I'm always about 50 to 70 million independents. I know it sounds bold and ambitious, but if you have any ideas in the future, please drop them in the comments. I'm going to jump to another guest as well, but I think that's what needs to be happen. It can't be any sort of Band-Aid fixes. And that's why Trump won, right? That's why Trump won twice. He's appealing to a far right people that they fell into the drain the swamp or clean out the deep state, and he was anti-establishment. Right. So it was, even though he has no moral character whatsoever, his anti-establishment sort of, whether you believed it or not, they fell into that trap. They believe maybe it's this guy who doesn't give a shit about anyone. Maybe he'll clean out everything.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've got to go.
Yeah. Thanks Chuck. See ya. All right. ADK Explorer, you're up next. Thanks for all the comments. I would say that was my opinion before when I say ranked choice is certainly better than what we had now. Yeah, that's my opinion. It's my observation and opinion. No doubt about it. You don't have to agree. That's okay. But I'm almost certain you'll agree that we need to eliminate corruption from our political system. And if you agree with that, that's what's most important. So ADKX was a Explorer. Welcome. What are your thoughts? How can we reach
Hey, thank
50
you
to
for
70
having me.
million people?
Yeah, I just I stumbled upon your live here, and you're spot on with a bunch of what you explained. Um, but I think the solution to it is a third party in America
Yep.
to pass constitutional amendments to get money out of politics. Reverse those Supreme Court decisions. It's going to be real tough without a third party.
I agree, because both parties are fully corrupted, right? They're completely corrupted. They have proven over the last 30 years that they're not willing to do what even the majority of Americans want on so many issues, and they just don't do it, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I thought about this a couple weeks ago, and I had an idea of how to do that. I'd like to get your opinion on it. So what I was thinking is that you build an app, and people that want to join the party have to join the app, and they have to be active in the party. So when a bill comes up, you would get something like a brief synopsis of that bill, how it's going to affect you, how it's going to affect, different elements of, that legislation. And then people would actually vote how they want their representatives to vote. So you have this party, we elect someone to, say, go to the House or the Senate. And whenever legislation comes up, you would get an alert, and it would say, hey, this is what's going on. How would you like your representative to vote? And part of the party rules would be that that representative has to vote based on how the party's members have told that person to vote.
Yeah. I think you're close. I think you're really close. I think there might be a couple, and there's always a couple flaws with everything, but an app has, I actually already have an app standing in the wings that could potentially be used to communicate with a group of people, whether it's a third party or it's a group of independents or a movement that wants to take over an existing party. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and none of it has to be determined today. But just creating an app is great. You need that, and I actually have an app that I've been in social and messaging for a long time and in other industries, but it's pointless at this point because you first need enough people, a community of people, because like someone in the comments just mentioned that you won't have consensus, right? What Ross Perot did in 1992, he ran and he tried to accumulate enough people to join, and that's how a campaign normally works. If we're really going to do something different as all of us as Americans, you have to get the movement and the community going first. I don't even like to call it a party or anything. I just want to know, is there enough people? Like once you get to 10 million, like you get to a million first, or 100,000, a million, and then 10 million. And once you have 10 million, you start to get some real momentum. You might even have a wave, but that's still not enough to do anything. You have to build a massive group of people that are behind just one or two simple things. Like, because if you eliminate corruption from our government and eliminate big money, every other issue can be fixed. Everything else starts to fall, because then you have actually representation by the people for the people, instead of right now is representation for the corporations and special interests. So 1 million people is nothing, 10 million is nothing.
Yeah, and that was kind of the idea behind that.
Yeah, build an app and get enough people first to
Yeah, it was kind of the idea behind that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Now,
So you got all these young people, right, that are kind of confused, or not confused, but they have
being manipulated.
they haven't completely made their decision on how they want to go. And you have a whole bunch of independents like myself that are totally fed up with these two parties, right?
Yep.
Half of the legislation that gets pushed through, it's all manipulated based on, the media narrative, depending on what news station you're watching, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if we were able to give people a breakdown of exactly what this legislation is, what they're voting on, and then force the representatives of the party to vote how the people want to vote, and even have it to where if you join the party, you have to be, active in that.
I think we lost you.
Say like 60% of the votes that come up.
Yeah, you're describing something that's close to like a technology form of direct democracy. It sort of goes against what the founding fathers set up in the Constitution. Not that it can't be done, because it would be outside of the confines. You're just talking sort of like party rules and using an app for that. The only problem with a direct democracy in this country is it's so vast and there's so many people, and you have to be so knowledgeable about so many topics that you may never get enough people to fully be involved enough. And that's why in Switzerland, direct democracy operates really slowly, because they have to have a consensus of a certain amount of people in order to vote. And it's actually, and that you're talking about a much smaller country. So your idea, I think, has a lot of merit and is valid. I just think representation is important, and that's how our Constitution is set up, and we should probably abide by that and just do it. And whether people actually, how involved they are or not, even if it was a third party or independence, at the end of the day, the representatives, as long as they're not getting enriched by special interest corporations and billionaires, most of the time they're probably going to act in the best interest of the people, especially if they're only there temporarily and for the good of the public. Right. So I don't know, like, if you go how deep in the weeds you need to go, I don't think you need to go that deep in the weeds. It's always going to have flaws. It's always going to be a bureaucracy. That's government. That's big companies. They all have the same issue. So it won't be perfect, but it'll be 100x better than what it is today.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, it's the same thing like with a town hall, though. People go to town halls, they tell the representatives what they feel, how they want them to vote on different issues.
That's right.
I think bringing technology into it, to play into it, where someone could get a notification and read like a 10 bullet point on what the legislation is going to do, and then click a button.
Yeah, it could be certainly a piece of it. I always say, as a technologist myself, you need to be careful of technology, because technology can always be hacked, and technology introduces its own problems, right?
No, yeah, that's true. I'm a computer science guy, and I understand the risk of that stuff. But it can be done. You could use blockchain, you could use different technologies to make sure it's transparent and fair.
Yep, that's true too. Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think that the third party, of somehow to get a third party going in America, would solve a lot of these issues. People would have to negotiate. You would have to come to the table. It wouldn't be us against them, which is what it is now. This bi-party system is just us against them now,
Yep.
and it has been for the last like 15 years.
Well, if Mr. Beast can have 200,
Anyway, hey, I thank you for having
yeah,
me.
May, thanks for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
So as the last caller, he had to run, but if Mr. Beast and other YouTube influencers and other influencers around the world can have hundreds of millions of followers and tens of millions of followers for entertainment and these other things, my point is that their civics should also have a place on the table, because civics is more important to our lives than anything else. So whether you're entertainment or education or just doom scrolling, whatever it is, there should be some large civics channel, and that's what I'm trying to do. And I hope that hundreds, or if not thousands, of other people will do it. That people give regular American some time to devote to civics and realize that government is not abstract; it affects our lives drastically every day. So, thanks for that last guest joining. If you have any thoughts on how we can reach 50 to 70 million independents, because we can talk about issues all the time, about how to fix different issues, and ranked choice voting is better than our current voting. These are all great ideas, but they don't fix the fundamental values and principles that we're no longer agreeing on. And that's what we need to take back from our both parties, is that we need 50 to 70 million people. It could take years. Hopefully we have that long to save our democracy. But if 50 to 70 million people just stepped up behind two issues only: eliminate big money corruption from politics, right? Get rid of the money, make sure that representation is for the people, by the people, like it was, the vision was intended to be. I'm not saying it was ever fully like that, but we need to get back to that, and eliminate politicians from having careers. Like, being a politician is supposed to be a temporary civic service. And that's how the founding fathers always envisioned it. So we need to reach 50 to 70 million independents and soft Republicans and soft Democrats to take back America from both parties. And we all know that that's an issue. Storm is coming, the statement The statement wasn't followed. Israel owns America government. So Jim Saratoga, am I trying to get an independent elected president? Not necessarily, but maybe. It could be an independent, it could be a third party, it could be, there's only two ways I see this ever getting fixed. Is either we build an organic community of people that want to take our government back from both parties, and that might be creating a third party, that might be having independents run, that might be infiltrating an existing party, much like MAGA did on the Republican side. There are many ways to do that. So it doesn't have to be electing independents, because we all know that's difficult. But if you had 50 to 70 million people who were united behind it, it could be done. The only other way you can fix it is if some transformational leader truly steps up and he doesn't get character assassinated and doesn't get pigeonholed into one party or the other. So that the Abraham Lincolns, and they still have enormous struggles, but if some generational leader stepped up and said, I want to change the world, and people from both sides just gravitated towards that person, whether it's a JFK or a Roosevelt or a Lincoln, but I don't see anybody on the horizon that is capable of doing that and sort of uniting people. People have tried to unite people, but no one in the current political realm is capable of doing that. So without that person, we have to have 50 to 70 million people. So first, you have to educate the people. You got to teach how politics work. That's true. Or you just have to give them hope, right? And try and you don't actually have to tell them everything how it works. You just have to, because we all know that Gen Z is really struggling in the world right now, and their ability to get jobs and earn a living and feed themselves and have housing and live the lives that Gen X has had and boomers have had, and even millennials had, is less than. So they know that the world's not headed in the right direction. So you just have to give them hope. And you just have to start turning their minds around, realizing it doesn't have to be the way it is. And they are the most important generation, I think, right now, is Gen Z, is the young generation coming up in conjunction with Gen X and Gen Y, which are millennials, and Gen Z. These three generations are going to have to come together and realize, in order to try and reestablish the values, American values, and of freedom and liberty and all those aspects of American values and fairness and the rule of law, all those types of things that we're aspiring to for the past 250 years. If we want to do that, you have to come back to those values. And that's the only way to fix it. Think Elon would be helpful or hurtful? Absolutely 100% hurtful. No chance. He is, that guy is a mess. Number one, he's a drug addict. Number two, he's a creep. Number three, he's from South Africa. His family comes from apartheid. Number four, he doesn't give a shit about anything other than himself and his own interests. And he is just not a decent human being. And most Americans recognize that. So while he used to be someone that you could look up to in some ways, he's certainly not today. I don't want a drug user, pedophilia dude. I don't think most Americans do. He's never been a person for the people, by the people. Like, he doesn't give a shit about democracy. He only cares about his own ambitions. Whatever those ambitions are, that's all he cares about. His ambition is not to make America, where he's not even a natural born citizen. His ambition is not to make the United States of America fulfill its values and its principles. He probably couldn't even pass an immigration test again if he had to. Who knows? But anyway, that's my thoughts on Elon. So it's a good comment. I think absolutely not. Other than his money, he's completely useless, and I think he's just a despicable human being. So just in case that wasn't clear, those are my thoughts. Thanks for the gifter, at B Godness. Thanks for the gifter badge. And yep, hopefully we can get away from this political duopoly. And that's right, Jeffrey, Levittown. If you're from Levittown, hello, familiar with it. Hope we can get away from political duopoly. That's basically what this is. And think about it. This is what all monopolies and duopolies are. Pepsi versus Coke, McDonald's versus Burger King, Popeyes versus KFC, or Popeyes versus Chick-fil-A. I mean, everything becomes these duopolies in this country where they end up both winning. Duopolies win because they basically freeze out everybody else. And that's what the Republican and Democratic Party have done. They've in at least in your mindset, they've convinced us that we've frozen out all other political competition. So you could almost call it the duopoly, a sort of a democratic fascism, if you want. Otherwise, because if in fascism you would eliminate all political opposition, but with a duopoly, you eliminate all political opposition, excuse me, except for that one other party, and that's basically what this duopoly has done. It's a form of, if you want to call it democratic fascism, I don't think it's too far off, because basically it prevents all other opposition. At least they want you to believe that. There's nothing that says it can't happen, that you can't have a third party. It's more of a cultural aspect in our mindsets that we believe that. And I'm trying to promote that it could be something different. But it's going to take a lot of people to come together or start growing a community and movement, and not arguing about culture wars. The culture war nonsense is so petty, so adolescent, and you're just all being manipulated. Anyone that's fighting about any culture war issue, I don't care if it's abortion, gun rights, transgender aspects, it's not important, but it's relatively to the sake of us fixing our democracy or taking back our government. It's not important. Eliminating corruption from government is the only thing, and making sure that politicians can't have a career in politics, that it's the civic service. You come in, you serve your your civic service, and then you're out. And then you go back to your private lives. Those two things has to happen. And most people, I've had thousands and tens of thousands of comments of people agreeing with that. And they come from MAGA, liberals, and everywhere in between. And that's how I know that these are the two things, those two things. There are more. Like, you could do the fairness doctrine of media. You can talk about other aspects. Supreme Court justices or being a judge should not be a career either. Those are very valid as well. But you don't want to start going into, dozens, if not hundreds of issues. You need to start at the top, and they're not issues, they're principles and they're values. You need to and that's the difference between the American system versus basically almost every other form of government, with anything with autocracy, authoritarianism, or fascism, or any of that. Those aren't systems. Those are cult of personalities, where you follow a person, and based on that one person's whim, you have to do whatever they say, basically, as a society. That's fascism, that's authoritarianism, that's all of it. These aren't really systems. The United States democracy is more of a system. A monarchy would be a family is determining what happens to its society. And when that person dies or moves on, there's somebody else. And then you have to follow that new, but it's not a system, that new person's views and that new authoritarian's views. And that's how, and they call that a system, but that's not a system. We are a system because in a democracy, we're constantly having people come in and out of power, or at least that's how it's supposed to be, right? So and our system is supposed to be based on a document, the Constitution, which is the law of the land, and the values that Constitution respects and honors. But the Constitution is an amazing document, but the people are not. It's the people are the problem. So you can have the greatest system in government, but if the people in government are not adhering to that document and to those rules of the land, then the document is almost worthless, right? It's not about the document and the Constitution. That's a fabulous document. It has a few warts and flaws, but it's meant to evolve through amendments. So it's not about the Constitution. It's about values and principles. That's what really matters. And that's what we have to come back to. If we're going to be this democratic experiment, is based on those principles and those values, and trying to adhere to them, or trying to always better ourselves on those values and those principles. And it's not about one person's thought on a certain issue or a group of people's thought about a certain issue. It's not about issues. It's about the principles. And if you can have values and principles that representation should be for the people, by the people, then everything else takes care of itself. It won't be perfect, but it will be so much better than it is now. And that's why I'm always promoting that there needs to be 50 to 70 million people. So I'll spend the next few years trying to advocate for that. So how do we reach 50 to 70 million independents and soft Republicans and soft liberals, reasonable, sensible people on both sides, because there are more independents than there are anybody else, including on either side of the parties. And we have no representation. Independents have no representation in government. And that needs to change, and it could change. Republic, if we can keep it. It's constitutional republic. Maybe you're just abbreviating, Jim Saratoga. A republic doesn't have to be a democracy, so it's really important to use the constitutional republic or representative democracy. They are both not one and the same, but all constitutional republics are representative democracies. So it's a constitutional republic, and we should be fighting to keep it, because you're not going to tear it down and build anything better. It can only get worse, because there's never, ever been a form of government that's better than a constitutional republic or a representative democracy. That's really important for people to understand. There is nothing better. Everything else, people think about libertarianism as, oh, maybe we should be libertarians. That's a fallacy. That's not a form of government. That's fiction. It's a theory. It doesn't exist in the real world. Being a libertarian cannot be. It's not a plausible political process or system. It's just pie in the sky. So there's a lot of people say, I'm a libertarian. Well, you have to realize there's not a single libertarian government in the world. And it's more of a philosophy and a theory. It does not work, because in libertarianism, because it sounds cool, right? It's small government. It's a lot of individual rights. It's people taking care of themselves, really small government. But the problem with that is the same problem that we had with the 13 colonies before we had a federal government after the Revolutionary War, is you can't protect yourself, right? You need a strong federal government to protect oneself, because if you don't protect oneself, meaning the government is too small and it doesn't have a military, and you're just hoping everybody does the right thing, low taxation and all these types of things, it doesn't work. It's a complete I'm friends with a lot of people that claim to be libertarians. They're from the blockchain world and the crypto world, and they just don't get it. Most of them are really young, and they just don't get it that it's a fallacy. You can't have libertarianism because it doesn't exist as a functional system of government. But again, we should maybe aspire to doing those types of things. I agree that having smaller, more efficient government is great, but you always have sociopaths, psychopaths, authoritarians, fascists that are trying to take over more land, build empires. That's always been the way of the world for 10,000 years, up until the last 80 years. And it's only because of democracy and the current world order of the United States being the heartbeat of democracy and all of our allies. When democracy is rising, authoritarianism, fascism is decreasing. It's very binary. The stronger democracy is around the world, which means self-rule, where people get a say in their governments, the weaker all authoritarians, fascism, and all other individual monarchies, they're all getting weaker. When democracy starts to wane and starts to get weaker, you see fascism and authoritarianism and autocracy rising. It's completely binary. You see that with the weakening of the United States, and it's our unwillingness to get involved some places. So those authoritarians become more emboldened. That's what happens. This is not conjecture. This is a fact of how it works. So you either have democracy, and this is why our values of American values, trying to promote democracy around the world has been the right thing to do. So if a group of people, sometimes we've gone way overboard and we've promoted democracy to people that don't want democracy, societies and civilizations that aren't ready for it, or religious reasons they don't want to move that direction. And we've sort of forced it or overly promoted it. We should stay out of those types of conflicts. But if there's like Ukraine, if there's a society that's voting Democratic and they want to move towards a democratic system, we have to promote that. We've been doing that ever since Roosevelt and the end of World War II. And that's been incredibly beneficial to all of us as Americans into keeping the peace around the world. So when people want to move towards self-rule, it should be supported by us. Now, it's a fine line between supporting and knowing when that society truly doesn't want to move the direction and they're not ready for it. We should not be in the business of building governments and building new countries and doing all those types of things. But we should be promoting our values, American values of freedom and liberty and law and order and all those aspects. So that's really important. And a lot of Americans don't understand because maybe they just haven't had time to do enough understanding of democracy around the world and the current world order. But the current world order is one of the most peaceful times in human history, at least certainly yes, you can join. Did you ask to join, Crashby? Yeah, absolutely. So join, and I'd love to hear your views. And most importantly, as I ramble on a little bit, it's about how do we reach 50 to 70 million independents? Because that's the only way. Okay, I see that you're in now. No, Richard's in. Richard, you're going to be in first. Crashby, you're not requested yet. Oh, I think I can invite you, though. So I'm going to invite you, but I'm going to have Richard jump in first and let me know.
What's up?
What's up,
Thanks,
man?
thanks for having me, man.
Oh, I think we have two of you in here. So I invited Crashby as
Richard's
well.
cool, too.
But
Yeah.
Richard,
Sorry, Crashby, you can go first.
yeah, Richard, you
No,
want?
I'm fine.
Yeah, go
I'm
for it,
fine.
Richard.
I'm fine. Hey, nice tool shed, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Try and keep it
It's not
organized.
green screen. Can you show us it's not green screen?
Yeah. What do you want to
Yeah,
see?
it's not green screen. Yeah,
Oh,
dude,
okay, yeah,
this
looks
guy's
good.
about to fix a car real quick, dude.
Dude, I just did a bottom end of a motorcycle, new bearings, new crankshaft, and all that stuff. This is not just a studio. This is an active garage.
Dude, I have a Honda Civic. I need a fucking engine replacement. Can you do it?
I don't have a lift, so unfortunately,
Ooh,
I
I
have
can get you one.
I have nice jacks, but I don't have a lift, so I tend to big jobs on cars. I tend to stay away from.
Right on, right on, right on.
Oh, so what are your thoughts?
in
Thanks for
America-
having me. Thanks for having me. And hi, Richard.
Hello.
So let me ask you something first, guys. First thing, tell me, Crashby first. Are you an American? What generation are you? And then Richard, right afterwards, same thing. Are you an American? And what generation?
I'm an American, and my dad was adopted, so I'm pretty original. I think like 6th generation.
Okay, and what generation are you? In terms of Gen Y, Gen Z,
Oh, I'm a millennial.
millennial.
I'm
Okay,
88.
all right,
88.
cool.
I'm
And Richard?
37. 37.
And Richard, how about you?
I'm 29.
Okay, so you're right on the border, right? So between Gen Z and
Isn't
millennial.
it weird? Yeah, I'm like the oldest Gen Zer and the youngest millennial.
So you can play it both ways, depending on what you want to be associated with. You can just claim.
Yeah, I'm more Gen Z. I feel like because
So can I say something? You know how you decipher? I think there is a split when you had DSL internet and when you had immediate internet.
I
think
had
that's
dial-up
the
though.
split.
Yeah. I had
Yeah,
that shit.
I think you're both wrong. I think if you had to eat all, you were definitely a Gen Xer like me.
yeah.
No,
And
I
so
had
when
that
you
all the way up
evolve,
until
yeah.
like 6th grade.
Oh
Like-
shit! Sorry to hear that.
That's what made the difference is when you can immediately look shit up or when you could have to dial up internet. I think that really was a split, but whatever.
Well, I appreciate you guys being on here, both being Gen Z-ish and millennial, because I like to have a lot of Gen Zers on here. I have kids that are younger Gen Zers than you guys, or one of you guys. And it's important because I think that generation, young millennials and Gen Z, are the most important generation of our lifetime because you guys have been poisoned, polluted, oversaturated, whatever you want to think about it, by this information age at a level that we've never seen before.
Information war
Information age. Sorry.
age.
Yeah, the information age has had a tremendous impact. So why don't you go first? Crashby, why don't you go first? What do you think about the thoughts about reaching 50 to 70 million independents?
I think that I don't know what side you lean on, but I think the Democratic Party. Oh shit.
Sorry, my bad.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, guys.
No, you're fine. I think the unaliving of Charlie Kirk really did a lot of shit for a lot of independents. I think independents, like, I'm moderate, man. I literally am moderate. I voted for Obama his first term. It was my first election, and then I watched what Obama did, and he was a piece of shit, dude.
All right,
He
give me
put-
one
he
example.
put-
What didn't you like that he did?
26,000 bombs, drone bombs. Yeah, I didn't like that.
Okay.
He said we can change, cause so mind you, I'm coming off of George Bush, right? This
Yep.
was 9/11. I remember 9/11, man. And George Bush really was a piece of shit, dude. And then I was like, my first time voting, I was like, oh, Obama might be different, man, because I had empathy. I really cared about people. But guess what Obama did? Obama was the deporter in chief, and he also was the bomber in chief, dude.
Mhm.
He blew up people.
So yeah, you're right.
26,000 bombs.
He
Yes.
removed 3 million illegal immigrants from our society, right? And
Yes, he did.
at the same rate that pretty much very close rate that what Trump's doing. Obviously,
Yeah.
they're handling it very differently. Obama did it through a lawful process, but nonetheless, he exported 3 million illegal immigrants.
Yeah, how is it? How is it? What is the difference between him and Trump right now?
In terms of illegal immigration.
Lawfulness, yes.
Oh, well, he went through the court system. They had
So he due processed.
there
He
was
due process.
yeah, there was an accelerated due process, but there was due process. He followed the rules. He wasn't breaking the law.
Okay.
He didn't
Is
have
Trump
mass. He
breaking
didn't
the
have
law?
mass people that could have been anybody. That could be anybody coming out in vans and just grabbing people off the streets.
Okay.
Right.
So do you not think that give me a second, dude. I like you, man. Civics.
I have a pretty short
I
point.
like
Can I
you.
just make my point real quick?
Here, Richard, take it.
Yeah,
Give
go,
me a
Richard.
second to fucking calculate my brain.
Yeah, because I mean the problem is
Take
how
it,
do we
Richard.
reach 50 to 70 million independents, right?
That's right.
So I'm gonna
Let's keep it on
answer that.
track.
Well, you guys can have that debate later, but I just want to like make my
Yeah,
point.
we can. Hit it,
Yeah.
Richard, though. Hit it.
Yeah,
Yep.
so I mean, we obviously like most people are stuck in the two-party system, right?
That's right.
Like either blue or red. And like, yeah, it's an amalgam of like different viewpoints in those two parties, but mostly people try to stick to two, right? Because obviously, if you leave, then you make your side weaker, and it's more about animosity towards the other side. So then it's like, okay, I don't want them to be in power, so then you can't leave your own side, right? You have to stay
Right.
in there.
It's a tribal mentality.
Yeah. So
Right.
I think we should just start over. Like, I think we should start the country over and go to Mars.
Oh, you were here the other day, Richard. All right, thanks. I appreciate it. So you're going back to Mars. Are you? Well, you should go.
Well, I think if we just took America and then we shipped everyone to Mars, I think we could start over. Like we
Okay.
could have new
Yeah,
parties.
probably.
Well, I think
So
you
isn't
you
that-
and
isn't
Elon
that
Musk put a phone call into
absolute
Elon Musk
libertarianism?
and
Come on, dude.
and make it happen. Go with Elon Musk and start a new society and see if you can do it better.
Yeah,
I would
well, I think
suggest,
I'm going
Richard.
with
I would
that.
suggest you bring the Constitution with you, and maybe
So-
less people.
No.
Well, I think we need to bring all of America to Mars.
No. Why would you bring America? We're the worst country ever. What are you talking about?
No, I like America. I mean, if we want to solve this issue, we just got to
Why do you like America? Why do you like America?
It's a very kind society.
Why is it?
And
why is it
powerful.
kind? Why is it kind?
What do you mean, why is it kind? Like, we're nice to immigrants for the most part. Like, I'm an
No,
immigrant.
that's libertarianism. Why is it kind? We are a nation built on Christianity, which has morals.
That's not
Yeah.
true. That's completely not true. We have people that were Protestants and Christians that used some of their religious values to set up the American values. But the American Constitution is a secular document. It has some Christian values that have been adopted, but we are not a Christian society. Don't stop the nonsense.
So I'm kind of like a.
We
like,
are
I
a
like to
Christian
use a lot of
society.
Inductive reasoning.
So what you're saying is that
Hold on.
oh, are we not Islamic? So what is
Well, I think, like-
Islamic society? You know they rape.
All right,
fucking-
I'm turning you off. Crashby, you're going down a direction. You're now muted. You can leave if you want, but you got to get yourself together and stop with the nonsense. I
Yeah,
want
I
to
really
love.
think-
So what is
too, like,
Islam, dude? What is Islam? What are their morals?
Well, I think like Christianity is not sufficient, right? Like, there's plenty of Christian countries that are not as great as the United States.
What
right?
are
Like,
Islamic
Christianity
morals?
alone was the determining factor that every Christian nation would be as like great as the United States. Obviously, that's not how it works.
The founding fathers purposely did not allowed the freedom of religion and did not allow or did not want governments to make laws based on religion. Period. It's a secular document. That was what the founding fathers wanted. No matter what their religious beliefs were, that is what they were trying to set up, and that's what they did set up through the Constitution.
Okay.
And if you don't
So,
believe that, then you
maybe
need to read the
You're absolutely
Constitution.
right. You're right. You're right, dude.
So, and what's
But-
wrong with that? So, I don't.
No, here's the problem. Here's the problem.
There's no problem. There's no problem at all with
There
that.
was no email sent
Oh,
to
boy.
Christianity that said, "Hey, by the way."
All right, Richard. I
Well,
kicked.
I'm still a semi-serious person, thankfully.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's see if you continue to go with the Mars, you're going to get the boot as well. But hopefully, you can have a rational discussion. Let's see.
All right. Well, so I think like when the founding fathers wrote the founding documents, right?
Mhm.
Like it was kind of revolutionary.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like they were pretty young. Like the founding fathers were between the age of 20 to 29, kind of like my generation. Isn't that kind of crazy?
It is, and they were incredibly intelligent and well educated.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that's something kind of miraculous about America too. It's like it's a bunch of young people, right? That had like who were not just young and like motivated, but they were also pretty darn smart because they set up a system that worked for 300 years.
Yep. Well, 200 coming on 250, right?
Yeah, 250, yeah. So anyway, so I think like, you know, when they had that system, right, the people who are maybe older thought that it was crazy, like, oh, you know, like this Constitution Republic thing, like that's kind of crazy.
Well, you have to think that when you're younger, you're much more of an idealist, right? And you're open to these new ways of thinking. When you tend to get older, you start to understand the way the world is and don't believe anything else is possible. So that may have something to. That's why I always think that Gen Z and millennials are so important because, like you pointed out, and I'm just looking up the ages here. Alexander Hamilton in 1776 was 21, James Madison 25, Thomas Jefferson 33. So these Benjamin Franklin was 70, but there was a variety of ages, but they were geared younger. Of course, people did live younger at that time. But
You're
they-
like my Benjamin Franklin. You 70?
he
No,
was
I'm just kidding.
Thanks. So Samuel Adams, 53, and Patrick Henry and Thomas Paine. Okay. So anyway, so you're right. So they were more idealists, right? They were coming from the old world and they were trying to set up something new, which is something that younger people tend to do. So that
Well,
is,
I think like men or like young people of this age, like my age, I think part of it is like you're pretty smart and you know, you're trying to make sense of the world, so you try to create systems. Like what's his face? Isaac Newton. Like he lived for 20 years after calculus, but you know, when he was younger, like he was motivated to develop a system. And the interesting thing about a lot of these systems is they work to explain many things, but they might not necessarily explain everything. So I think if Isaac Newton lived longer, like calculus falls apart under certain like conditions, right? We might not have had calculus by Isaac Newton. So I think that's a very interesting perspective, right? Same thing with like the Constitution. It's like, okay, you know, they created a system that answered some of the political questions of the time, and it was better, but it's obviously not perfect, right?
well, the beginning of the Constitution didn't include the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments, right? Well, and so it did when it was ratified. But the reason it wasn't ratified beforehand is because it gave too much power to the federals, so the Federalists, they call them, right? And the anti-Federalists were the people that were more for individual freedoms and states' rights. So they were never able to get the Constitution passed until they came to a consensus or an agreement, right, that said, okay, we have to balance this out a little bit. And that was compromise, right? And that compromise allowed to have a strong federal government and also protect individual rights.
Yeah. So
So
I
what do you
think
think
that's
there's
kind of
wrong?
what-
Like I always tell people that there's nothing wrong, nothing inherently wrong with the Constitution. It's the people
I don't
that,
think there's anything inherently wrong. I just think there's weaknesses. Like for example, the two-party system. It's very gridlocked.
well, that's not part of the
Right.
Constitution, though. There's nothing
Right,
referencing.
well, it's part of the system that they set up.
No, it's not. That's actually, I understand why you believe that. It's actually not. George Washington was against all parties formation. They just didn't put it in the Constitution that there could be no parties.
Right, but I feel like it wasn't that many years after they created the system, right? So
No, there was the Whig
not saying, like,
Party,
it
there
was
was the
intentional,
Independent
it was a
Party, there's the Whig
consequence of
Party, there was so many parties in independence in the early days. It just ended up coalescing around two parties in the 20th century.
Well, I think like that's a feature, not a bug.
That's a feature, not a bug. Well, that's sort of an inevitability that you could say that would eventually happen,
Yeah.
that people come together and create parties, right?
Yeah.
But in many other countries, there's 5 parties or 6 parties.
Like George Washington said, like there shouldn't be parties, but he knew that parties were inevitable, right?
Well, maybe.
Like clearly they saw that as a risk.
Maybe Thomas Jefferson knew that the Constitution needed to be a living document and there needed to be amendments. So they knew that, they were living with 18th century morals and ideals, and they knew they couldn't predict the future. So they didn't just build a document that said, hey, this is it. They designed it on purpose so that it could evolve with the changing times of morality and the world order and those things. So, like I said, there's nothing inherently wrong with it at all. It's actually almost a perfect document in some ways because it allows the evolution. So you don't have to rip up the document because the document's not the problem. The people are the problem. And if you had people that actually gave a shit about America and your generation and millennials and all of us, they would have amendments that would continue to further the ideals or the vision that those people had.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I think like, from my perspective, okay, you know what? Yeah, I was gonna fuck with you and say Mars. Okay.
I knew that was coming. I was actually waiting for it.
You're looking at me like
I'm waiting for the Mars comment. Trust me. I'm not the, super quick, but after 5 or 6 times, you're probably not going to get me the 7th time.
I was setting up pretty good, but I started feeling bad. I was like, okay, this is a pretty honest discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll say this though. I do low key believe that I say it like humorously, but I do think that systems come and go. And I think that part of America, why it's so multiculturalism, was because we literally went to a new piece of land
That's right.
and we inhabited that land and everything was new. So it's not weighed down by like years of monarchy. It's not weighed down by, like ancient tradition. And like it's not even weighed down by like a majority dominant like ethnicity.
So that's why you should go to Mars and start over because there's no new land in this Earth to create a new system of government because there's no clean slate.
Well, so like I say that humorously, but like I do think it's logical. Like I'm not saying that we should do it like now, but I'm saying that like in the future, like the Martian like country or colony would probably be like the equivalent of America.
Yeah, it doesn't help us at all. We got to get out of the solar system. So, but let's keep it to 50 to 70 million people on this Earth, right? So,
Yeah.
you made a great point. It is obvious that when people say we should start over, whether you think it's on Mars or not, irregardless, there's a lot of people that think we should burn it down and start over. There is no starting over. The fact is, there's 340 million people on this country, on this land. The only reason we have American democracy in the first place is because they had an opportunity with a relatively clean slate to do what they did. It can't happen otherwise.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah, so
with so many resources and so far away from the rest of the world, not able to be easily attacked, it was a fortune of opportunities, right?
yeah. Well, it would be hard to attack Mars.
Right. True. Well, maybe depends on what type of technology the aliens
think,
have.
like, for America, I think I think the 2024 MAGA party was pretty close to being quote unquote independent. I mean, now we see that it's not so great, but I do think that at least how I saw the situation, it felt like it was more of an independent party. Whereas, I mean, again, 6 months in, like
They were more like
America's not-
I don't say independent. Independent would be sort of a centrist or moderate. They were a new party. You could almost claim that
Yeah.
MAGA took over the Republican Party and created a new party in the shoes of the old Republican Party.
Yeah, and it felt like it was because you had people from the Democrat Party coming over, right? Like, what's her name? She ran for Democrat president. I forget her name. She was from Hawaii.
Oh, talking about Gabbard?
Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
Yeah, like she was a Democrat.
No, she
right?
wasn't a
So-
Democrat. She's a Russian troll. She's certainly not American.
Okay, well, I don't know too much.
She's a
about Tulsi Gabbard.
compromat. She's a compromat, as they say. She's been compromised.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, it felt that way, like from the outside looking in, right? We also had like RFK coming in, And you could also not like RFK, but he was obviously not a Republican either. He was running as an independent, right?
Yep, I guess.
So in some ways, like, you know, the promised like MAGA party of 2024, at least from my perspective,
I think you're partially right. What it proves is that if enough people come together and want something, they can do it.
Yeah, so I think it has to coalesce around a very charismatic leader,
Yep.
right?
Wow.
And you know, I think right now we're actually breeding that like I think there's a lot of like open discussion. I think we actually have space for that leader to emerge. Obviously, we don't know who it is yet, but I don't think it's someone existing in the public as of right now. But I think someone of my generation, possibly.
Yeah, your generation should start to come together around a couple ideals, and I would hope that it would be eliminating corruption from our political system, because if you don't do that, nothing else gets fixed. Literally nothing else gets fixed. Everything else will continue to go towards the rich and the powerful. The people in control will maintain control, and then you'll never get anything done that you'll ever want.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty important. Maybe 10 years,
Yep.
because I think the asset inflation is pretty bad. Like in terms of like wealth inequality, it's definitely went up quite a bit this year.
Yep.
So like for example, me, like I had a lot of money to invest, and like my net worth, like somebody who didn't have as much money like as me to invest would have gotten left way behind, right? Like because this year I'm up like about $300,000 trading, and like that's because I had money. But if I didn't, there's no way. And that's like, you know, like imagine if I had even more money, right?
Yeah,
Like, if I
well,
have
only
millions.
10% of the population actively invest in the stock market. There's 45% of the population that actually has some stock basically in their 401ks. But if you're not actively involved in the growth of corporations, meaning investing in stocks, then you're going to get left behind, because food prices go up, housing prices go up, transportation houses go up, your healthcare is going up, right?
Yeah. So to your point of like the rich getting richer, like this is an insane year for that. Like
Yeah.
the rich are
Well,
getting
no, well,
very rich.
it's been insane 2.5 decades, 3 decades, ever since, well, maybe you could even go
I
back
think ever
3
since
decades.
2008.
You could even go back before then. The rich are yeah, but it's accelerating, right? It's not linear. It's more like a
Yeah.
J curve.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like if you beat inflation every single year, right?
Well, someone
Those,
wants
like,
to know here.
percentages that
I'm
you
going to
know.
interrupt. It's Genzel, because it's a great comment. Genzel Isaac, Jzel Isaac. Why aren't you talking about the Convention of States? This is the start. Let me respond to you, Jzel. If you want to come into the group, let me know. Why aren't you talking about the Convention of States? It's pretty simple. So the Convention of States is a nice idea, and it could plausibly happen. Technically, it is something that's not impossible. But the problem is, there's the Convention of States, which has never happened before, where 34 state legislators have gotten together and decide to have a Convention of States to amend the Constitution. So it is actually one of those plausible things that could be done. The problem is the Convention of States started in 2014 in terms of the organization. There's a Convention of States, and then there's an organization of the Convention of States. People blur those two things. And the Convention of States is essentially dead. It barely has a pulse. It's run by a bunch of former politicians. There's a lot of former career politicians involved in the Convention of States, and that is not something that's going to gain a lot of traction, because those people have been already sort of character assassinated or pigeonholed in one party or the other. So while it has merit, it probably will never happen. And I would rather go after 50 to 70 million independents, because the Convention of States seems to be a pipe dream at this point. If you go to the Convention of States website, the first thing they do is basically ask you for money. And then if you look at who's backing the Convention of States, it's a bunch of billionaires and wealthy people. I'm not even saying they have bad intentions. Their intentions might be pure, but it will never gain any traction. And it's been 11 years now, and it's barely something on the radar. So that's why I would say, Mr. Isaacson, that the Convention of States is not the start. If someone else wants to be out there and promoting it, and it had some content creators or organicity to it, then maybe it could gain some traction. But right now, it can't gain any traction. So that's why I'm not talking about the Convention of States. And I would rather have more people get involved in eliminating corruption from government and replacing all career politicians. So I hope that was clear, Genzel.
So Convention of States is like an organization?
It's also an organization, right? So it's in the Constitution. I think it's Article 4 in the Constitution. The Convention of States can gather to amend the Constitution, but there's also an organization called the Convention of States. Yeah.
Mm. So I think like whoever is going to be the leader, I think it's going to be like a non-autistic version of Elon Musk, like a very rich tech billionaire.
You think it needs to be another rich tech billionaire?
Yes.
Yeah. If there was such thing
Well, I
as a,
think like you need to, well, because I think like a person, like you have to think about the typical profile of a person today that's strictly into politics, right? Like
no, you don't.
those,
There's people that come out from the grassroots, you know, whether it was AOC came from grassroots and into politics or other people. There's,
well, yeah, well, I think she was always aspirational to do politics. But I think like those type of people, the curve of like influence, it's kind of messed up because you go from 0 to 100, right? Like you go from obscure to like instantly like wielding power, whereas somebody who is a tech billionaire, like you have to work for it, like on a more linear curve.
not really. Most of the tech billionaires that are billionaires are not necessarily self-made. Now, if there is someone truly self-made that really had the grind, and there are some, I'm not saying there's not, so I do give your point. If there was the right billionaire that still was more interested in politics or representation and saving democracy, it could happen. But the
Well, I
problem
think
is,
you have to be post scarcity, right? Like
what
if
happens
you
is
were
when you
very-
have something, though, you try and protect it. So when you become a billionaire, number one, you lose touch with reality and you start to believe that power, whether it was in politics or billionaire, you start to believe you're always right because, listen, you were able to make $1 billion and you weren't able to make $1 billion fairly. The only reason you're a billionaire today is because you have taken advantage of the tax laws that allowed you to become a billionaire because you're taking care of the loopholes and you don't have to pay your fair share of taxes. So as you become a billionaire, as you become older, you lose your ability to relate to regular people. And most likely, in almost all cases, those people never actually worked a normal job like real people had or had families and had all the struggles. So they can't relate to them either. So I would argue that it's much better to have regular Americans that are under X net wealth that would do a much better job because they have higher levels of moral integrity and understanding, can relate to people. And it's some of the most famous presidents we have had a wonderful, like Bill Clinton is one of them, that he didn't come from a lot of money. He came from, I forget the name of the town in Alabama. So he may have been privileged for that little town, but he didn't come from privilege. And some of the best politicians have not come from privilege, or the ones able to relate to normal people.
Yeah. So let's say like, are you retired or are you still working?
I'm still working.
Okay. So do you work for yourself or for somebody else?
I've been an entrepreneur my whole life.
Entrepreneur. Okay. So that example is not too great because I was thinking about working. For
Well,
somebody
actually,
else.
let me take that. I haven't been an entrepreneur my whole life. I've worked for many companies over the past 10 years.
Okay. All right. So imagine your boss was yelling at you, right? Like saying like, "Oh, you are an idiot. You are dumb. You're gonna get fired, right? If you don't do that." Okay. Imagine you had $10 billion. Would you care what your boss was saying to you?
No, because that's FU money. Once you have FU money,
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
you say FU.
That's why you need FU money. Like you can't be influenced by money. Like once you have FU money, like you're set,
Yeah, that's a
Now
point of view.
someone-
That might have some merit, sure.
right? Yeah, that's what I mean, right? Like if you were filthy rich and your boss was yelling at you, like, all right, whatever, man, I'm richer. Like whatever.
Now, the richest people are the ones that stand on their values and have the best relationships. Those are the richest people in the world. They have the best lives.
Yeah, I think some billionaires might. Like I don't think it's necessary that you have to cheat your way up there.
No, there are some. I agree. There are some that have more. I would say Mark Cuban is an example, as arrogant as he can be. Great example is he cleans his own, makes his family clean their house. Right? They don't have house cleaners. Their kids, their wife, and himself clean their own house. Like he keeps it grounded. He's one of those guys that has not moved too far away into that billionaire class, and he has some amount of can relate to normal
When I
people.
look at Mark Cuban, I don't trust him. I feel like he has very low morals.
I always go back and forth in Mark, but
Yeah.
it just as an example. I'm not
My,
advocating for him, but he could be someone that he can relate to the regular people. Like I said, I think he's extremely arrogant at times. But that's also what happens when you become a billionaire. Sometimes you also believe
Yeah.
you're often right, and people can't
Well,
question you.
I feel like he's disingenuous by his political beliefs. But I mean, that's a different argument.
Right.
That's a whole different like debate. Yeah.
Right.
But I think like it obviously like ideally you want somebody who's like the traditional American hero. You start from nothing, right? And then you build all the way to the top. But I just think that like Trump being like the only person who's from the outside of the politics and like very close to being a third party like candidate. That's
Oh,
why I
then
think that
then you
he's
don't know
really
much
good.
about Donald Trump. He's been involved, so I can remember Donald Trump as far back as 1977, and he was always waiting. While he was not a politician, he was always wading into politics and being very involved since 1977, and that's just from when I remember. So to think that he's anti-establishment is a bunch of bullshit. He's talked about being in politics before 2008 and in the 90s as well. He's had influence on politics, and he comes from money. If he just put his money into the S&P 500 and didn't touch it and didn't do any of the real estate, he'd have a lot more money than he does today, with the exception of all his cryptocurrency scams.
Yeah, so I think Trump talked a pretty big game, but obviously we see now that he just capitulated on everything because the system was stronger than him.
That's right. That's why I believe that there needs to be 50 to 70 million Americans that have integrity, because you can argue, and I have argued this, that the reason Trump has been successful in winning elections is because politics is always about two things. It's about hope and hate, or usually hope versus hate. You either have someone spewing hate, like a Hitler, to get into power, or you are being hopeful, like a Clinton, Obama, or Reagan, and so forth. They were very hopeful, right? And they won on hope, or they win on hate. The interesting about Trump is he did both. He would run on hope to those people. There were a certain segment of people, meaning those in MAGA, that heard his message, like the deep state and draining the swamp and cleaning up government. That to them was hopeful. The other segment of America thought he was spewing hate. Like, I'm going to build a wall, all immigrants got to get out, et cetera, which he does as well. So he was one of the unique candidates, as dumb as he is. And I think he's just, sometimes it's simplicity in his dumbness is what works for him, because he was able to do both, to
I
convey
think you'll
hope
get
and
your
hate.
candidate.
What?
Okay, so I think you'll get the candidate that you want for a leader of the independent party if the Republicans are in power. I think right now we have the most free speech of like the past 8 years. But my opinion is
That's
that if the
absurd.
Democrats take over,
They're book banning and Jimmy Kimmel and government threatening private companies and private individuals continuously is not,
yeah,
it-
but I couldn't talk on TikTok at all, like in the previous years.
what does TikTok have
Or
to
like
do?
if
That's a
I make
private,
content, if I like,
application.
yeah, but it was strictly enforced. Like in a couple, like during Biden, it was very enforced.
Why couldn't you talk?
Like all speech was enforced because we had like pretty terrible cancel culture. Also, Twitter was completely owned by
That's
the
only
liberals.
again, that's when government should not be involved in private industry and influencing, other than severe hate speech. If there's severe hate speech, that's always been an
Yeah.
exception
Well,
around.
that's what I'm saying. Like right now, I feel like
You're
from my
making
experience,
one fight that you can broadcast your speech easier because of what you claim between TikTok under Biden and TikTok under Trump, but you fail to
well,
ignore
not
that.
just TikTok, but also Twitter and the news, right? Because now they have competitors. Like the news has competitors.
That's not free speech. That's your ability to broadcast your speech.
Okay.
But
Well, I think the ability to broadcast speech is much more equal.
so why
And
would you think that is? Because that sows, and that's rhetorical.
yeah,
That sows division. The more misinformation you allow, and whether it's from China, from Russia, or from right-wing propaganda influencers or left-wing propaganda influencers, the more you create division. And that division is good for people retaining power. It's
do you
just
think
that
there's
clear.
more division today than the previous years?
More division with what?
Division division in general. Like, do you think there's
I-
more division
I think
right now?
our division in our politics has been increasing for the past 20, 30 years, for sure. Every year.
Well, I think the violence part is from the fact that the right has won the culture war. If that's what like the escalation of division is, what you're referring to, like the violence, right? Like the shootings. or the pew pewing, whatever, TikTok, TOS. But I think what happened was
Yeah.
that the right has won the argument for now, and there are people who are on the fringes of the left who are just lashing out violently.
Well, I don't think there's any evidence recently of violence happening from the left. I think none of that's proven. And it's still 71% of the violence happens from the right. So you're making a claim that the violence is happening more.
Well, I
But
don't think
anyway,
the
actually,
violence.
so I don't want to go down this route because that's never about my platform, arguing about these sort of issues, actually trying to avoid it. I'm all about, as a
Okay.
fierce independent, if your generation wants, if you're serious at all and your generation wants a
Well, I've
better,
been pretty serious now.
yeah, you have been, absolutely. But so I'm just reaffirming it. If your generation and the millennials and even my generation are serious about protecting the American values, all the values, right? So those are the fairness, individualism, freedom and liberty, equality, democracy, the rule of law, all that stuff. If you guys are serious about protecting that, like your generation is going to have to step up and actually be serious. So I know sometimes you're not serious, but there's going to need to be 50 to 70 million people because otherwise you're just going to continue to do what we were just doing, is fighting
I
about
think
these.
the 21-year-old to 29 is the best demographic. I think the younger generation is cooked. They're very right-wing extremists.
I think
Like,
21
they're-
and 29 has been manipulated.
Yeah.
You know, if most of the social media is right-wing propaganda, people talk about most of media is left-leaning. That's not true anymore. The consumption of information, when you combine traditional media and social media, there's more people consuming what seemingly is right-wing or right propaganda or misinformation or disinformation, however, all those aspects. There's more information being consumed that is meant to mislead or misinform than there has been on like what fair
Well, I
media
think-
should be.
Right. So I think when you have a free market of ideas, the right just won. Like, you can always listen to left-leaning like content creators.
You can always,
Right.
or in 5 years, will you be able to do that?
Well, I don't know, but
Right. Well, that's what you have
Right
to protect
now-
for.
well,
That- see, that's what-
right
but
now,
Germany-
like, when people were given the choice,
Nazi
what
Germany
resonated
didn't
with
turn
them-
into Nazi Germany in just when Hitler took over. It took him about 7 years, from 1929 through 1936. He was viewed by the majority of Americans, Europeans, as not that bad. And it wasn't until he ended up taking complete control by banning all opposition parties and all opposition, that, and of course persecuting Jews, that became what he became. So you need to be,
Well, I think like
you
a
just need to
pathway
reference
for a-
history.
Yeah, so I think a pathway for, you know, a uniparty system is just you gotta stop the violence, right? Because it's a big excuse for
No,
the
you
people in
got-
charge to say
You gotta,
we're gonna do whatever
you
is
gotta stop the
necessary.
division. You have to, it starts with the mentality. It starts in your minds. It starts with stopping arguing about culture issues and stop arguing about smaller issues that are just not so consequential. This is about a powerful versus the powerless, the haves versus the have-nots. This is what the fight is against. And if people don't realize that, and your generation doesn't realize that, we should all be uniting to remove the people that are in power, all aspects of power, special interests, politicians, corporations, billionaires. That is the problem. And if you don't, then you will have a worse and worse future.
In
Guaranteed.
your hypothetical independent American party, what do you think the immigration policy would be?
See, that's the thing about that, so that sort of party. Let's say even a uni party. You don't have to determine that, a stance. What you need to do is have representation for the people. So every part, whether you're in Alabama or California, you elect people with moral integrity and that have values. And those people will come to an agreement. So I think everyone would agree in the centrist, and to answer your question specifically, what it's about is that you prevent all illegal immigration, and people that are here legally, and you may have to do some sort of asylum, whatever it might be. But you're going to have, in every one of these issues, you will get people on the right, on the left, and the center who are sensible, who will compromise and will agree that this is how it should be. And most people on the left right now agree that illegal immigrants and violent illegal immigrants should be expelled from the country. Most
Well,
people,
I think
a lot of people say that's not true. It is true. Yes. No one's.
Well, I think the left lost a lot of like the people on immigration. in 2020 when they campaigned on basically free immigration.
They did not campaign it. There was no such thing as open borders. That was made up bullshit by the Republicans. There was no
Well, I
open
was
borders.
watching the debate, and they were saying like, who on the panel is for healthcare for illegal immigrants, and everybody rose their hands.
Well, then you forget that in the first year of the Biden administration, he tried to pass immigration reform, and then he did it also in his last year. And
Well,
Trump
yeah,
is
because when they won, all the immigrants came in, so now they had to pass bills to stop it, right? But it was kind of their fault that it happened.
it was probably their fault by it happened because of the messaging, yes, but not by the laws. They didn't do anything different on the laws. They just had a wave of
people respond to the messaging before the laws, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's fair. But
Yeah,
that's
so
the
I
point
think
is, it's not, again, we're arguing about left versus right. It's not about left versus right. There's easy solutions, relatively straightforward solutions for all these issues if you have representation for the people by the people. And
Right,
they're
I think,
willing
like,
and they're willing to compromise. Compromise is winning. Arguing is losing.
yeah, I mean, I don't like to argue.
Yeah.
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 So I'm just like hypothetical, right? Like, okay, like, you know, it might be a deal breaker for some people, right? To join a party, and it's like, okay, well, we kind of disagree on this thing, right? You know what I mean? I'm just trying to play it out. Like, obviously, like, I want no corruption. I want like moral people as leaders. But when it comes down to the issue, right? Like, how do you keep the coalition together when they might have opposing views on something that they care about a lot?
You have what Japan has. You can do a single party where everybody's in a single party or no party at all. Like these, you don't have to keep a coalition.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty convoluted. So I want somebody smarter than me to figure that stuff out. I'm pretty good at just finding holes in things, but I'm not like a great fixer, you know?
Well, you just need lots of people that are willing. Again, you don't have to fix every problem. Everything that I say or you say or someone else in the comments say is not going to always be right. It's just a matter of, can you be rational and reasonable? And are you actually want to fix things and not just talk about problems, which is what most of your generation is doom scrolling. And when it comes to anything political, it's just whether it's Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro, or it's even Dean Withers or Parker, all these people doing on both sides is just talking about problems. And basically,
Well,
they're
they're
just
trying to win
grifting.
debates. They're not trying to convince people at all.
Yeah,
They're just trying to like
that's a
bully
shame.
people into submission.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Like, you're not like, I don't think Parker or Dean have changed a single person's mind, but they've gotten a lot of money from it because
Absolutely.
they get donations.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. If you and me, like, I think you and me would be a part of the independent party because we agree on most things. We agree differently on like who we like. Like, you like different people, but like on policy, like we've been pretty consistent.
Yeah, I don't care about unless they're really extreme on either side. I don't care if they're reasonable people that care about their families and care about future generations, as long as they respect American values and what the Constitution, the vision of the Declaration of Independence, the vision of that. If they respect that, you can come from be a farmer in Alabama, or a socialite from Los Angeles, and it will work.
Yeah. So, you know what? After talking to you, I think we might
Go
get
to
enough
Mars?
independence. No,
On Mars.
no, I'm done with the trolling. I'm done with the
Okay.
trolling. I have my good punchlines. Yeah.
All right.
No, I'm saying like we have enough people, like in terms of like, because now that I think, I mean, you're obviously like more left. I know you're independent, but you're probably more left leaning than right leaning.
No, I have social progressive views and fiscally conservative views, probably like the majority of Americans do.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a market for that, right? It's just that we don't want to like for you, let's say, right? Trump winning is worse, right? Whereas for me, let's say Kamala winning is worse. You know what I mean? Like I'm more worried about Kamala winning.
No,
than
I'm
Trump.
older than you. MAGA winning is worse for you, and for sure.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like for like in your perspective, right? Like you're more worried about Trump winning, and I'm more worried about Kamala winning.
No. I'm
why we
worried.
vote
I'm not
different.
worried no matter who tramples on the 10 of first, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. No matter who does that, I'm against.
Yeah, I mean,
This is
Yeah,
really
there's a whole-
simple. Again, this is not about people. And this is the problem. Everybody fights about people and issues. This is about principles and values. And too many Americans, including your generation, is being overwhelming. Instead of just going back to some hardcore principles and values, like stop being transactional, stop being having ego get in the way. Just think about what you want to stand for in a society. Like, you don't want to walk down the street and get shot, right? That's freedom. But you also don't want to have your gun taken away from you, because that's also freedom. So where is the balance between those two things? Both are a matter of freedom. I can't walk down this country with a beer in my hand. Is that freedom?
Yeah, I think both parties are being pulled like apart by some of the extremists. Like there are people who are too hardcore on the guns, right? And then they're too hardcore on banning the guns.
Right. Well, listen, all politicians have to answer to the people that pay them, and that's the special interest in billionaires. And if you run any company, you donate to both parties relatively equally, because you have to. You just want a seat at the
I feel
table.
like the gun lobby is overrated. I don't think it's a big lobby.
No, well, it used to be a very big lobby, but it's about fear, right? So when we talked about hope and fear before, the gun lobby is, and I don't think about gun manufacturers, it's more about ammunition makers. Whenever they have an opportunity to scare you into buying more ammunition and guns, but ammunitions is the recurring revenue here, and ammunition prices have gone up crazy amounts. So I would say people who are gun advocates and get scared that when they start talking about they're going to come and take away your guns, well, number one, it's bullshit. No one's ever threatened to come and, well, some people have, but we have a Second Amendment. We have a strong gun culture in America. No one's taking away guns, but those people get scared using fear tactics. And then those people who are scaring them, meaning the NRA, or not so much the NRA, the people that are supporting the NRA, the gun manufacturers and the ammunition makers, they say, oh, this is great, because if we scare people, then they're going to go out and buy more ammunition. So it's a complete manipulation of gun owners who get scared into believing some hyperbolic message that's being conveyed that someone's going to take your guns. No one's going to take your guns. 89%
Well,
of
I
the
think
people
there's
want.
precedent for that. That's why, like when Trump banned bumper stocks, right? Mass shootings still happened.
Bump
Like it was
stocks.
a pretty big well, yeah, bump stocks, right?
Yeah.
Because like back then they were like, okay, we're not going to ban all your guns. Let's just ban this like one part of a gun. And then Trump banned it, and then we're still calling for gun control. So it's kind of a slippery slope that's been proven right.
Oh, I don't think what slippery slope's been proven right. You're bringing up one subtle example
Right.
that hasn't really done that.
Well,
But again,
well,
that
the
would be a
slippery
scare
slope is
tactic. So that's a scare tactic that you're repeating, a talking point that you're repeating based on like, oh, you can't, there's always a balance in things. I should be able to walk down the street freely, and people should be able to own guns. But that's no different than transportation. I should be able to drive my car wherever I want, right? Or I should be able to go across the country as I want and have freedom to go across country, travel as I want to, right? But that's
Yeah.
not completely unlimited. That's not unregulated. There are regulations. I have to have a license. I'm supposed to have insurance and other aspects, right? So
Yeah, so all I'm saying is just that like one of the fears of a lot of the voters is that okay, we banned the AR-15.
oh, by the way,
Now,
just a great comment. Sorry. Reagan is the only president to ever sign a bill to ban assault rifles. Interesting. That's the username is someone
Yeah,
else.
so I mean, so we just keep signing more bills, and there's still more gun violence, and then we just keep signing until we ban all the guns. I mean, that's
We
kind of
haven't
the
signed it.
logical
We haven't
conclusion.
restricted any guns other than what Reagan did and the bump stocks, right? What else has been done?
Yeah. Well, that's
89%
what I'm saying,
of
like,
89% of Americans, including those who are affiliated with the NRA and most gun owners, want federal laws around background checks, a universal background check policy throughout the United States. There's no
Yeah, we
reason
should
not to
have
pass that. What?
yeah, we should have that.
Right.
I'm surprised we don't.
Now, and I would say instead of the left saying we need to fix these things, again, we're going down to the thing of issues, but just to make one point here, instead of the left coming up and saying we should ban guns, I would put the onus as independent saying, hey, gun owners, stop the bullshit. You fix this. You want your kids to be safe in schools too. You don't want to get shot at a concert. You don't want these things. So why don't you guys come up with solutions? Don't make the other side do it, and get people who are interested in politics and not the special interests trying to scare them saying, why don't you guys fix it? And put all the onus on any sort of gun rights lobbyists or politicians, those that are favorable. The American population should be putting pressure on them to say, why don't you guys come up with a solution? You want the same shit. You don't want to get killed going to a concert. You don't want your kids you want them to be safe going to schools, right? And you still also want to have gun rights. So figure it out. Instead of always blaming the left for being the only ones that put forth solutions, because the people on the right are not putting forth any solutions other than more guns is better. Anyway, we're going down a topic where we shouldn't be going down. I'm going to
I'm
drop
not
you.
too passionate about gun control.
Yeah, but we're using it as an example, right? An example to
Yeah.
show that every issue, no matter what it is, you can have a discussion about it and you can fix it. But you cannot do that. And everyone, small group watching now, but anybody watching, you cannot do that if you have the corruption in politics. If you have big money in politics, which means individual lobbies like the NRA, you can't fix this problem because they're just able to buy politicians or put forth politicians that can get elected and refuse to make have
Well,
any
I think-
solutions.
I think you should be at least a self-made millionaire before you run for Congress.
I think that's silly. You don't put whether it's too old or too young, or you have to have a certain amount of money. That's all nonsense. That's discrimination. That's discrimination, and that goes against again having values and the rule of law. And you shouldn't be for those things.
It's kind of hard to like know who has values or not. And also,
No,
I
it's
feel
not.
like
No,
people
it's
get
not.
those with-
See, that's the thing. Your generation doesn't. As you get older, you become much easier at
Well,
that.
I know, but I'm saying that people don't know. I
Yeah,
know
of
who
course
has
they do.
values.
People always tell you and show you who they are. All you have to do is watch and listen.
Yeah, but I feel like most people are suckers.
Well, maybe just convince more people
They're
that
not
to
very
actually listen.
discerning.
More people are not suckers. They're just tribal. A lot of people are tribal, but there's 75 million people that are consider themselves independents, and I don't consider them suckers. I consider them probably the most wisest group because they haven't been suckered into signing their allegiance to a Republican or Democratic Party.
Wait, we have 50 to 70 million people who register as independent?
You don't register as independent. You are an independent. There are
Right.
some states now that actually ask you to check a mark, so it's a little blurry there. But there are 150 million people that vote in a general election, meaning the presidential election. There's 45 million registered Democrats and there's 40 million registered Republicans. That means the rest are not registered with either party. That's a fact. Now, that doesn't say that a lot of those people don't lean one way or the other, but they've just not been suckered, using your word, to check that box that says, hey, I want to vote in the Republican primaries or I want to vote
Well,
in
I'm more against the point that if somebody is elected, then they have good morals.
Remember, people's history. There's a lot of millions of Americans with great, with moral integrity on the red side and the blue side. I have lots of friends on both sides that have lots of moral integrity. They have different views on issues, but they are decent human beings. Now, doesn't mean some of them wouldn't be corrupted by power, but that's why you also have to limit how long people can be in power.
Yeah, I'm a nice person, but if you gave me a lot of money, I'd take it, you know?
See, well, I always say people tell you who they are.
I want to get rich.
There you
I
go.
want to get rich.
So you keep investing all that money and maybe you'll be there. But thanks for joining again, Richard. Appreciate it.
It was a good talk, man.
No, see you, man.
The last one was a joke, by the way.
Oh, all right.
No, I meant like the getting rich part. Like that was a joke.
Okay.
Obviously.
Work on your delivery of your sarcasm. Like, because it's just audio and I can't see your facial expressions, you got to deliver it with a little bit more.
No, it's kind of like it's my thing, you know, just
That dry,
monotone.
the dry sarcasm that you can't decipher.
That's the best part, right?
It is. It is. Absolutely.
wonderful.
It puts people on edge. It makes them uncomfortable. It's not a bad, it's a good play. We'll see you. All right. So this live is pretty much waiting. I do really want to know if there's anyone else that wants to join. That was a long discussion with Richard. We probably lost a couple of people that wanted to be guests, but nonetheless, some good comments. I hope you enjoyed that banter a little bit. How do we reach 50 to 70 million Americans or independents to take back America from both parties? Because I promise you, the smaller audience that's watching right now, I think most of you agree that that has to happen. Song of Dreams, maybe. But again, remember, people tell you who they are, and maybe that joke had some reality behind it, right? So that's usually just have to decipher what people tell you. What people tell you, that's who they are. And sometimes they do try and disguise it as a joke. And that's something that's common as well. So good point. Very good point. Song of Dreams. We need ranked choice instant runoff elections. Yeah, that's a great starting point as well, but we're never going to have it. as long as the two political parties are in power. That's why I always refer that it can't be, there's no little incremental solutions to improve our democracy or take back America. Like, I just don't see it anymore. I think it has to be something really dramatic, like an inspirational leader, truly inspirational leader, or an organic movement of people, 50 to 70 million people, or maybe something like a convention of states. But I just don't see that one happening either. We require something really bold. And remember, all bold ideas sound impossible until they become possible. And with our social media reach these days, which is also being limited at times, it is possible to get 50 to 70 million people, independents and soft liberals and soft Republicans, or sensible people on both sides, to do something. But it'd take a long time. I want progressive policies. Well, you know what, Elizabeth, you make a great point. So Elizabeth Moss says, I'm all for taking out big money and corruption in politics and in SCOTUS, but I want progressive policies. I can respect your views that you want progressive policies, but some people want conservative policies, and you're both right. What you truly want is representation for the people, by the people, and you won't always get your way. Human history or evolution does move towards more progressive policies at times, but you also have to understand that not everybody moves at the same speed as one another. So my last caller or last guest made a really good point that the right has won the culture wars. And the right is right, actually, when it comes to some of the culture wars. They've said a large segment of the population, whether you like it or not, and whether I like it or not, it doesn't really matter. You have to respect that humans don't like significant change. And when you force down progressive or liberal policies down their throat, and you start going to some crazy stuff like with the sexism and the pronouns and so forth, and you're saying there's more than two sexes. Well, a majority of America has spoken loudly and saying they're not going to let it happen. They're going to resort to violence if they need to, and they're going to do anything that possible, even voting against their best interests, to say that you have to stop the nonsense. So there has to be some equality or understanding or respect given to whether you're a rural American and you define yourself as MAGA, or you live in an urban area and you're a liberal. You have to understand that you're both right. The lifeblood or the lifeline of America is our heartland. It is our rural Americans that are farmers and miners and so forth. And those people have a say, and you should respect what they say. And if they think that things are moving too fast or too far and too progressive, they have stood up and said so. Just like America doesn't seem to be ready for a woman president. The Democrats have nominated 2 out of the last 3 cycles, women presidents, and America said they're not ready for that. Whether I agree with it or not, or whether I believe it or not, is irrelevant. It's respecting one another, all of the population, to realize that there has to be some compromise. And you may want things to be more progressive, or you may want things to be more conservative. But if you always get your way, we're going to be losing, like what's happening now. All right, so a few more comments. Someone else, you can jump in on the guest if you want, and we can talk about equality for all, equality for none, but their policies restrict rights. My daughter does not exist and is not worth less than a biological female. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying there's been rights that have been given to gay rights and gay marriages. There wasn't too much pushback on that. But there just seems to be that you keep pushing, the liberals have been keep pushing the right too much. And you got to know when there's a time, societies move slowly. All right, well, I think I'm going to cut it for today. Or not for today, just this topic. I hope the few that are here will realize that if there are 50 to 70 million independents and reasonable and sensible Americans that want to do something else versus this left versus right nonsense, then someone else, I'm going to go grab some lunch at this point, and I'm going to come back on a little bit later and talk about something else. So I hope you're around then. And thanks for watching. If you haven't followed already, and by the way, I have a plan. If you can see it, it's tinyurl.com/TK Civics plan. It's a plan to take back America, citizens plan to bring representation back to the people. If you can see that link up there, if you can't see the link because it's hidden behind some of this stuff, then you can just go to my profile and click on the link underneath my profile. It'll take you to the articles that show that I'm not just about talking about the problems like most people are. I have solutions to these problems, and hopefully people will read the plan, take 5 minutes, read the plan, and realize it has some validity and merit if there are 50 to 70 million people. So thanks for joining. I'll see you guys probably later. Cheers.